Hello and welcome back to the show. So I'm really excited about my guest today, Ben Jimmerson, because Ben is not only a fantastic real estate agent, but he's also a team leader, a veteran, and a former brokerage owner who recently made the move to partner with us at eXp Realty and the Wolfpack as well. So Ben's going to be sharing a little bit about his experience working as a successful real estate brokerage owner, how to build up a real estate team, a real estate company, and also his decision to come partner with us at EXP as well. So Ben, welcome to the show, man. Super excited to have you join us here today.
Yeah, man, thanks. Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dig into everything, I would just love for you to have an opportunity to share with our audience just a little bit about who you are and maybe your journey in real estate. How did you get started? How did you come into owning your own company and where you are here today?
Yeah, appreciate it. So, like you said, I'm a veteran, Army veteran of 10 years, and what going on 9 years now, really like 8, 9 years ago, I was still in the military, and I was actually deployed. I was taking my real estate course online, volunteering at a organization over there called the USO. So that way, when I got back, I was planning on getting out and getting my real estate license. So 8 going on 9 years now. I've had my real estate license after I came back from a deployment.
Yeah, so that's how you got started, and so you jumped into being an agent right away. Is that right? So you were individual agent before you got started building up your own team.
Yeah, yeah. For 3 years, I was an individual agent, and right at the third year mark, only because I misunderstood the rules to get my brokerage license. I thought you had to do 3 years, but really you only had to do two, which I'm kind of thankful for that to have another year to learn before I got my brokerage license. Because what actually happened, kind of crazy story is I was at a smaller independent 100% franchise or not a franchise, 100% brokerage. And so I was in the process of like, taking my broker's test and the current broker there, kept on asking me, like how much further along, are you? When are you going to take your test? When are you going to be done? And I thought it was, so I could get some training on how to be an actual broker, which she kind of already did, like going through deals and like understanding compliance and just watching and learning from her, but no like actual like formal, broker training. So I was excited. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get some training from somebody who's been doing this for 20 years. Like she's smart. And, little did I know, her and the other agent in the brokerage who actually started up that brokerage, it was another guy's brokerage, but they started up the branch here, were going to leave. And they just wanted to know like how soon I was getting my license so I could become the broker without telling me so that they could leave. And so like year three, here I am, still a new like n not too experienced agent. I get my broker's license and get thrown into the role of, not just being a broker, but a qualifying broker in charge of agents. But also we had a property management company at that time, so I was the broker for that. And we were also a HUD listing brokerage as well. So like I took on three roles that, I'm not gonna say I didn't have experience in. I learned, but like literally just getting my license at 3 years old as a broker, getting thrown into all that. So drinking from a fire hydrant for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting spot, right? Usually when, agents get started into kind of jumping in that role, maybe some agents want to start a team first. Maybe they have like one or two agents working under them. So when you first got started and kind of pushed in that role as basically the managing broker for your branch, how many agents did you like end up taking over at a time when you first got started?
I really can't remember, somewhere around like 5 or 10. So not, not a lot, but still a lot as a new broker and having to take on two other roles as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think so for sure because you're not like just taking over as the role as like a team leader, right? Which a lot of agents kind of maybe attribute that kind of mindset to. But as a broker, you're responsible for all the agents' transactions and their paperwork. You have to make sure that everything's being reviewed, and you're essentially the last line of defense, right, for all the agents and their transactions. So you have to manage 5 or 10 agents, and they're all actively going out there doing deals. So I mean, it's quite an interesting spot to jump right into 3 years into your career, I definitely say.
Yeah, and to add on top of that, not like trying to say anything about anybody or anything at all. I don't mean that. But with the property management company, the previous broker, who left that threw me into all this, the property management company was getting sued because of a tenant who supposedly got like the top of her finger cut off from a garage door. That, she was given the information to just manually open and close the garage door because the garage door opener wasn't working. I mean, like nobody's thinking that anything like that'll happen. We're still not 100% sure if that was true because later we found out this lady was like a habitual, lawsuit person or whatever. But still, like, I didn't get in trouble, but I had to go through that process and make sure to deliver the information to attorneys and stuff like that. So it was just like this tidal wave of responsibilities and things that happen all at one time.
Yeah, yeah, really, really unique, just kind of making that jump. A question I ask all the time for anybody who's, a successful agent first as an individual, then gets either by themselves or start their own company, building the team, is that transition, right? So was there any kind of lessons that you learned about, maybe going from this individual operator, right, where you're just kind of responsible for yourself to now being the leader, the responsible person for now 5 to 10 agents? Was there anything that you learned that's, maybe a difference, new skill sets that you would say that would apply specifically to leadership in real estate brokerage and real estate agency that maybe an individual agent, even if they're successful, may or may not possess if they want to step into that role?
That's a good question. Oh, you put me on the spot there on that one. Let's see here. Give me a second. I mean, you got to have a lot of grit just in general to be able to step into that role. You talk about leadership. That's definitely something that you have to develop over time. And I think fortunately, I had already been on a like mental leadership journey years before. So I'd been preparing myself because honestly, 3 years before, I didn't have my license. I was sitting overseas deployed, and I knew before I even like was going through my course that I wanted to get my broker's license. I wanted to start my own brokerage and hopefully bring something to my area that we didn't have here. So I was already like on that path, but just leadership in general, it's not something that, comes to people naturally. And it's something you have to learn. Thankfully, the military kind of helped me with that because I was an NCO, so I was in charge of soldiers during my time in, so that kind of helped with that too as well. But also knowing that I wanted to get my brokerage license, so I started doing the research and putting in the time and the effort and work to understand leadership, and that's really been a big thing for me. Like a matter of fact, as soon as all that happened, I was following Darren Hardy,
Mhm.
and he like just so happens during that time he was running a program called the Hero's Journey, and I still have this thick book of that program that I went through as soon as I got my broker's license. But leadership, having that grit and determination, and being this is probably a big one. Being patient with people, and being able to understand how to talk to people and understanding how people need to be talked to. I'm sure people have heard of like the DISC assessment and some of the other quizzes and surveys and programs that are out there. It really helps to know what kind of person they are so you can, you know, speak to them in the way that they need to be spoken to, but having a lot of patience too, because nobody wants somebody that, leadership is not about having a title, right? It's not about, ooh, look at me, I'm cool, I own something, or I'm the boss of people, right? Like you have people's hands in your lives, and that's a very delicate and important thing, especially in, our world, real estate, right? So many agents fail, and you could be that differentiating factor of where they don't fail if you spend the time on yourself and you know, work on your leadership.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned having patience with people because that's one thing I think we've interviewed a few team leaders and brokerage owners. That's one thing I haven't really heard. Actually, just having patience when it comes to leadership because you're really going from a position where you're 100% responsible, right? Because we're all, as an individual agent, if you're in the business for 3 years and you're getting your broker's license, you're probably up there in the top performers realm of real estate agents. So you know what it takes for you to be successful. But a lot of agents who are just getting started, or other agents who might not be performing on a higher level as high of a level, right? It sometimes for a lot of people that can be frustrating if you have to lead them right away. So it's all about, like you said, having patience, right? Not everybody's going to be at your level right away. And then how do we talk to these people in a way that they can be receptive of the advice that you give, of the motivation that you're trying to cultivate in them as well.
100%. Yeah, I think that's why a lot of agents, even in other brokerages over the years, have always reached out to me because, the one they see that I'm a person of knowledge and education, like I'm always researching everything that I can, and then I'm sharing that out there, putting that out there in the world. But then, I guess I come across as an easy person to speak to as well. So I've literally had like other agents at other brokerages calling me about, how to do a deal or something, and of course I'm sitting there thinking in the back of my mind, I was like, what is your broker doing? But I help them anyways.
Yeah, and that's part of it, right? That's part of why, makes what makes a good leader is that you're willing to help. You're willing to serve as much as you can and provide value to the people that need it. Which kind of brings me to my next point. My next question is you're obviously you sat as a broker for another company, right? When you first kind of got into that role of leading other agents, but you decided to, later on in your career to start your own company as well. So what did that process look like? What made you decide to start your company? Did you feel like you were ready at a certain point? Because I know that was something you were thinking about already, right? Before you even got your real estate license.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to that, like I knew I wanted to start my own brokerage. And I actually left that 100% brokerage where I was the broker for like a brief 6 to 9 months and went back solo with a one of the well-known older franchises because they were a builder as well, and I was, thought I wanted to get into new construction. Come to find out that that company wasn't, what they said they were. But I met an agent there who was a top producer, and I had been researching this other company franchise that we ended up partnering together and bought into to start our own franchise. But to answer that question, it just goes back to I already knew I wanted to do something, and I'd found this franchise that we bought into a few years back, and I had been researching them because, like I said before, I'm a big researcher. I like to research stuff for a little while, kind of like vet them, vet the company, vet the process because there's a lot of, fly by night people out there. But if you watch something for long enough, like a year or two, and they're still there and they're progressing, then there must be something there with that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, going in and starting your own company, obviously it's going to be a little bit different than taking over just kind of in a management position, right? So, when you guys first started your company, your brokerage, what were some of the first things that you worked on that you thought was important to build it up, right? And to actually make it a business where make it a platform where agents are going to be attracted to it and you can build out your company and start bringing on agents.
Well, first and foremost, it was just the platform of the company in general, the model that they had and the different commission models and the way that we could like, create whatever we wanted to. We weren't like forced into, certain commission splits, their technology, the leadership and just how they ran things in general was definitely new to this area. Nobody's seen that before. But I'm glad you asked that question because that was something that was on my mind. I knew what I was getting, but I also knew what I wasn't getting and wanted to make sure that something was in place. And so, I started working on putting together like a course for, newer agents or struggling agents for them to come on board to make sure that they really understand things. Because one thing that I've really seen in this industry that is not talked about enough or not stressed, like there's all these coaches, course creators, mentors, whatever that are out there, and they're teaching lead generation, right? Which is very important, right? You need to get the business in, but when you get the business in, then what do you do? And so many agents struggle with that. They haven't taken the time to sit down and actually read the contracts and the paperwork and know that information. And that brings me to something that's been on my mind for a very long time and I'm working on is what I call the foundation, like the agent blueprint foundation. It's the things that the brokers never tell agents at all because they're just trying to get them into production again. It's necessary. That is a good thing. And you do learn by failures, right? But like, what if somebody just spent a little bit of time with you to learn some of the other things to set your foundation up right? And it's kind of comical to me when I think about foundation. Comical in the fact that like we're in real estate. So what's the, biggest thing about a home is the foundation, right? Or like if you're in new construction, what is the first thing they do? They build the foundation. They make sure you have a strong, solid foundation so that way when you do get going, you don't have all these problems and issues, right? Everybody loves to talk about scaling and growing and getting big and all that stuff or whatever. Well, what they don't realize is when they get there, all these problems show up. Well, guess what? Those problems don't have to be there if you built your foundation right. But nobody's really talking about that, to be honest. Like, I still don't see anybody talking about that. There may be one or two or three people that I don't know about, but no, I mean, you tell me, do you see anybody like really talking about like the foundations? It's the basic stuff.
No, it's not something that's talked about enough in the industry. I don't think so because a lot of, like you said, like a lot of times it's about the scale, right? About how do we scale your business to this level? How do we do this or take you to that next level of production? But nobody talks about building the foundation. And you're absolutely correct on that. If you build, your career on a shaky foundation, then, one thing goes wrong, everything starts collapsing. Everything you've built will collapse on itself.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people use the word pillars, right? Well, all those pillars can collapse if the foundation they're being built on is not good at all. Even stuff like something that's really big to me is like kind of like the financial money management financial education side of things is because, most people are coming into this and they've never been self-employed before, a 1099 individual like, and they don't realize, a lot of agents don't realize, they still don't realize that you're a business owner. And so you have to treat this like a business, even as a solo agent, but especially when you start a team or a brokerage, now you just added that extra layer of being a business owner into this. And, nobody's talking about, business entities and forming that, make sure you get your business banking account, EIN. I've learned business funding over the years, and a lot of people don't even know about that, and how you can use that to actually grow and scale your business to get access to funding that's not personally guaranteed to you. I can go on and on about that, but I'll stop there with that.
No, I think it's important that you talk about that because that is something that's never, I don't really hear anybody talking about, setting up entities and being able to build out like a balance sheet for your business for real estate agents specifically. Maybe there's small business owner trainers out there, programs out there that of course that's all they talk about, but on the real estate agent side, that's never something that's ever I see mentioned online or anywhere at all, right? For newer agents. That's something that's kind of left out, right? It's just get going. How do we generate leads? How do you start prospecting from day one? But never about, all these things that you talked about to build, your balance sheet. And do you need to have the right entity? How do you get registered, right? And as a brokerage owner, I mean, that's probably something that, you need to do right away. That's the first thing you need to do, right? To set
Yeah,
up your business before anything else gets going.
absolutely. Yeah. A lot of agents, especially solo, are not looking at a P&L. They probably don't even set up a P&L or know to, even look at it quarterly and like actually, have somebody to advise them on it to be able to help actually grow and scale their business. But going back to your question again is, I created that course because I wanted agents to know the basics very well, because like I said, I'm a big researcher and I noticed one of the biggest issues where, agents are like, I don't even know contracts. I kept hearing that from like experienced agents having to help younger agents on their first deal, and they're with a different brokerage and they're asking the listing agent, how do I don't even know what I'm doing. So I'm like, I'm not going to have the agents in my brokerage not know what they're doing. Like, I hope not, or at least if anything, going back to the patients, one of the biggest things for me and my partner is we let agents know, hey, there's no stupid questions. The only stupid question is one that you don't ask, but we want you to know that you can feel comfortable to come to us about any question. Like, you shouldn't be asking anybody else any questions at all. You should come to us. That's what I'm here for as your broker, is to, train, guide, mentor you and help you in any way that I can. And so that was another big thing for us, is just the transparency, right? On letting them know not to be scared to ask us questions because I don't want that situation to happen. Hopefully they've learned enough by them, but you never know. Real estate's crazy. Sometimes people get their license and right away, a deal flies in from somebody they know or whatever. So you do have to learn on the fly. But that's what I did. I created a course and was just trying to help set the foundation for agents.
Yeah, and that's so important. I think that's, one of the reasons what made your company very successful is that there's not a lot of that out there. A lot of the brokerages are just, this is the platform and this is we're just going to go recruit from day one and recruit, recruit, recruit. But there's no value being provided to the agents coming in, right? There's no direction. There's no foundation being built.
Yeah,
And there's taking in any agent that they could and trying to get them up producing, getting them leads or, teaching them how to get leads as well. And so I think what you've done is really unique, it's really structured, and I think it's helpful if you're trying to build a business that will, stand for a long time to come as well. Whether if you're building a team, your own business as an individual agent or a brokerage, or kind of what you're doing now with EXP with the revenue sharing as well.
100%, man.
Yeah. So talking about that, we want to switch a little bit here and just kind of go over your decision, right? So you were your own real estate brokerage owner for a while, and recently you decided to, partner your company, partner your business with EXP. So where did that decision come from? There's been a few independent brokerages out there, even former franchises that's partnered with EXP throughout the years. I mean, still a lot of independent brokerages out there who are, not necessarily opening their ears, right, to maybe see where the opportunity lies. So, what was it that made you kind of made the switch in your mind to at least begin evaluating EXP as a potential partnership for you?
Before I get into it, I want to say one thing about what you just said about opening their ears. So I just had this conversation with another brokerage owner, small independent brokerage owner this morning, that I sent a message to, and they were kind of like, I don't know, it's text messages, so I don't know if I took it the right way, but it kind of seemed, very defensive, and they were just like, no, I'm never gonna sell out. Never do that. This is my baby. I built it from nothing. And I politely commented back, and I was just like, the most expensive thing that you can own. I was like, I've learned over the years the most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind. And you get that all the time when you're talking to people, whether it's you're trying to get a solo agent, a team leader, a broker, but especially team leaders and brokers. They've built something, and so it's a little bit harder to let go of it, even though they don't realize they don't have to fully let go of it. They can just structure it a different way. But it's crazy. Like I said, 8 years ago, going on 9, I knew I wanted to get my broker's license. I knew I wanted to start my own brokerage, and I knew I wanted to bring something to the area that wasn't here. And so, like, that was my goal, that was my plan, and I did it. And I did bring something very unique to the area. So it was kind of tough. We were 3 years in, and I was just sitting there thinking and then realizing that 8 years ago when I had this thought, the real estate landscape was way different for real estate agents and brokerages. But here I am 5 years or yeah, 5 years later, and a lot has changed, in that 5 to 8 year timeline. And so I just realized, that there was a better way, honestly. Like when you boil it all down and you look at it, there's absolutely a better way. What's crazy is it's kind of like a full circle moment because when I started 8 years ago, I started with another guy that's a veteran as well. We're still friends. He actually joined me here at EXP in my downline. Sorry, one second. But he told me about EXP 8 years ago. And we never did anything. We never joined because we were brand new agents, but I'll never forget it. Like the first brokerage I was with was another small independent mom and pop, and literally the office was right down the road from where I live right now. So that's why I say like it's a crazy full circle moment. One, where I live now, I just moved back to the area about 3 years ago. And actually, yeah, 2 or 3 years ago. But first brokerage was right down the road, and we were standing outside close to the road, me, him, and another agent that all started together, and he was telling us about EXP, and I just kind of, blew it off. But I've known about EXP for the entire time. I've even been recruited by other, higher up people. I've talked to, previous executives at EXP over the years. I've been to big events and got to go be in like press boxes with people trying to attract me to EXP. I just kept, pushing it off because I didn't really fully understand what I understand now of, how the real estate landscape is for agents and more importantly for team leaders and brokerages. Being a brokerage owner, you learn a whole lot more, right? You're running a business and what you learn is, and this is the truth, you can go ask pretty much every, brokerage owner, especially anybody under 100 agents. And, it depends on their area, but they're probably not making a lot of money and they're probably losing money a lot of months. Honestly, it's just the way it is. On the outside, it looks great. You've got all these agents, you're making all these social media posts, but on the back end, you're not really doing that well because it takes money to make money. You've got the overhead of your office and tech and whatever else you're trying to provide to agents. And, yeah, you can charge, monthly fees to kind of cover some of that tech, which we did. You can charge E&O fees, but you really don't make a ton off of that unless you have a lot of agents. And then you're not making a lot of money off of the splits if you don't have, producing agents. They're not producing enough. And that's why you see a lot of brokerages trying to scale and grow to a certain number because they need that many agents to make their overhead. There's a story about a brokerage I could tell you here in town and I mean, it's crazy. They're really big now, but I learned probably shouldn't know this info, but when they first started, they were struggling to pay their rent, and the only reason they can pay it now is because they've got a ton of agents. And so if they started losing some of those agents, then who knows? They may not be able to pay it, or it wouldn't be making as much money, right? So the point is a lot of brokerages are not making a lot of money, whether they want to tell you or not, whether it's pride, ego, whatever the case may be. But to be honest with you, really like my biggest thing that, helped me make my decision was experiencing all that, knowing that like we were profitable overall. But I saw that to scale this thing as a brokerage owner, it takes a lot and there's not a lot of profit out there versus I could go somewhere that is in every state already, not just in every state, but we're in 29 countries now and instantly get access to that, to the people, the information, the tools and the resources. But the big thing for me, the one thing that's on my mind right now and should be on every agent's mind, whether brand new agent, or especially experienced agent. Another thing that's not talked about, I actually posted this in several of the large real estate Facebook groups, and there wasn't a ton of chatter on it. And some people were just like, because most agents don't make it. And I was like, well, what about the ones that actually do make it, but it was retirement, right? What's your exit strategy? And a lot of agents don't get told this, but there's not a lot of, information or brokerages teaching them, their exit strategy, the retirement plan. And being here at EXP, we have rev share, which is the biggest factor, and then there's stocks. It's, being able to, it's like being a broker without being a broker. When you talk about rev share, right? You attract an agent on, and it's kind of like you're the broker that recruited that agent, and now you're making a little bit off of what they make, but it's not coming out of their money, right? It's coming out of the company's money that they're giving back, which is awesome. So that's probably the biggest reason for my shift is, one, experiencing owning a brokerage and realizing how the landscape has changed, truly realizing that scaling and growing, it takes a lot. If I wanted to add another location, now there's all this overhead and figuring it all out, right? Finding the location, finding a broker to connect with as well to run that location. So there's just a lot of overhead, a lot of crap to deal with versus I could come to a company like this and just start talking to agents and get them to come on because that's already been figured out, right? We're in every state in the country and 28 other countries as well. So it's just like that instant network and ability to add on people. And I'll use a marketing term for you because marketing is a passion of mine because I realize that marketing runs the world. It's the way, we as agents, we have to market ourselves. to get our name out there to get business. And so in the marketing world, there's an acronym called TAM, Total Allowable Market. And have you heard that term?
Yes, yes, I have.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know what it means. It's like instantly my total allowable market just expanded to the entire world, the globe. You know, we're an international global company versus owning a brokerage in a small town. That was my total allowable market. You know, we don't even have 1,000 agents here. And I forget how many brokerages we have, probably like 40 plus. So, you know, there's always a ceiling and a cap to something. And in my area with less than 1,000 agents, you know, how many can I really capture? At a certain point, you know, you're gonna peak out. But now I'm open to the what millions of agents around the world that I can potentially get a percentage of that. So that percentage is way higher than trying to run a brokerage locally. And it not only is it higher, but it's a lot easier too because of the tools and the resources, the knowledge, the people here at this company, you know, people that have been doing it for as long as I've been alive, you know, or they're doing it at a higher level somewhere else that, you know, I may never be able to achieve just because of my market, you know, average homes in my market and how many homes are in my market, but being able to learn from them and bring that to my area to, you know, capture as much of the market as I can. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Like the first thing that I did when I got here at EXP, because I'm a researcher, right? So I'm a nerd, is I think I spent the first month just diving into everything EXP. You know, most people would say, you know, get going back at it, right? But what did I tell you earlier? I like to build my foundation, right? I probably know more about EXP. I don't probably know. I know because I've been in chats with other EXP agents and I know more than they do. And they've been here for years, multiple years, 5, 10 years and stuff like that because I went through everything. That's just how I am. Like I get something new, you know, shiny new tool or piece of tech or whatever is I'm messing with it. I'm clicking all the buttons and I'm clicking all the buttons of all the buttons and I'm going down the rabbit hole until the rabbit hole ends. And so I'm able to answer questions that other people can't because of that. And it makes me a resource, right? That's one thing I could tell any agent, you know, team leader and brokerage owner too, is, you know, you got to be a resource, right? For people. I know about all the divisions here and, you know, to be able to use that to help me attract agents. You know, that's the other part of the whole like TAM thing, like being where I was as a brokerage owner of a franchise. We didn't have any of those divisions. You know, we're not 80 plus thousand agents strong, so we don't have any buying power like EXP does. And so they're able to go to these companies and say, man, we got 80,000 agents. You know, what's the best deal that you can give to us? And that's how they're able to put together these insanely awesome divisions that people are leaving other companies for, flocking to because of the resources and the tools that they're putting together. So I mean, it's insane. You know, I've gotten referrals from agents right off the bat that I never would have got if I'd stayed where I was. You know, I eliminated all the overhead. I eliminated the liability and the stress that comes along with being a brokerage owner. But in the end, you know, in the long term, it's going to come out better. You know, I was watching a video earlier I was telling you about with Mike and another guy, brokerage owner with 130 agents, and he said it best. You know, he understood that initially, like you're going to take a hit, but the long term is what matters, and it's going back to that exit and retirement plan, right? I've been saying this, you know, it's not cool to be 60 and still having to sell real estate unless you're doing it because you want to, right? Like, you know, if you do have an exit retirement plan set up and you don't have to work, but you're doing it because you just want to, because you love it, and you don't want to sit at home and be bored or whatever the case may be, nothing wrong with that. But if you're doing it because you have to, that's crazy. And like, you really need to be thinking about your retirement and your exit plan. And being at EXP gives you that through rev share. You know, some agents are like, man, I don't want to recruit or attract people. You know, I don't like the way that feels. But they've probably incidentally brought agents on to their brokerage before, not thinking about it. You know, just talking to agents through deals or whatever. You know, becoming friends, and they got paid nothing for that. They got nothing, no value, nothing out of that at all.
Exactly. It's a new way of looking at the world of real estate, right? It's a new way of building your business. No, whether if you're coming in as an individual agent or like you guys did as a brokerage owner as well. And I love it that you mentioned that when you guys came over, you guys were profitable, right? Because I think there's a misconception out there that oh, the only brokerages or teams that come over and join with EXP are the ones that are losing money or they're failing, right? And that's not the case, right? There's successful businesses that are coming over because you just see that there's another way that's better, that's easier, that lets you get to your goals faster without having to carry on all the liability, all the stress, everything, all the headaches that comes with, you being the sole owner of your business, or you're building your business off of, like you said, an existing foundation that's been built for, over a decade. That's 80,000 plus agents that works, that's in multiple markets. And it's something for for a lot of people to begin considering, I think, as they see other successful brokers like yourself moving over.
Yeah, another thing I was just thinking about is, there's agents out there, team leaders, brokerage owners that, if they're in multiple markets, they're having to pay all these extra fees, to either have another office, or if you're, a team leader or even a solo agent and you're with like a franchise or something like that, you're having to pay multiple, desk fees or tech fees for each franchise location. Whereas somebody like us or a cloud-based brokerage, like for me, for instance, the reason why I'm saying this is I've been saying I'm going to get my Florida license because I'm in Alabama, but I'm right on the line. But if I get my Florida license, I don't have to worry about anything else. I'm already paying what I'm going to pay. Nothing's going to change other than I'm going to get a license and be able to start, doing business down there, other than having to pay the board and the MLS. You're going to have to pay that either way. But at least, with the company that I'm at, I'm not looking at extra fees for that. And there's agents that are out there that are paying, two to three times the different fees, in multiple states with multiple licenses.
Yep, absolutely. Just one of the other benefits of being a cloud-based independent all across the world as well.
Yeah.
So, Ben, man, just want to say thank you for taking some time today and sharing your experience, your value with us here on the podcast. But for agents out there that want to get in touch with you, that want to learn a little bit more about how they can maybe work with you, or hear more about your experience moving over to EXP as a brokerage owner, where are some of the best places that people can find you and reach you?
Honestly, I don't have anything set up right now. I'm working on that. So the easiest thing you can do is you can Google my name, Ben Jimmerson, and I promise you I'll pop up. So
Yeah.
you'll find a way. Just DM me, message me on one of my social media channels, preferably Facebook. That's where I'm more so at. But my number's out there too, so I don't mind giving it out. You can always text or call me at 334-672-3045. But if you Google me, I promise you you'll find me.
Absolutely, man. We'll make sure to leave your Facebook link in the description, the show notes down below. And before we let you go, is there any last pieces of advice, any just last nuggets you want to just leave with us here today?
You sure you want to ask me that question?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anything you
Yeah.
want to leave with us?
So if you are a team leader or brokerage owner, watching this video, I already know what you're thinking. I've been there. I get it that it's your baby, right? You can keep your brand and come over to EXP. That's what a lot of people are, so afraid of is they built this brand and this identity or whatever. Like you can keep that. You don't have to worry about that. And then the second and last thing I'll say is don't wait. Like, don't get in your head and think about all these different ways that and things you have to have to transition. Yeah, we can work through that. It is something that, definitely needs to be handled, but don't let it overcomplicate, in your mind of how all that's going to happen and what it's going to look like. I keep saying, I wish I would have done this 8 years ago. Like, I would have given anything. There's no telling where, where I would really be at now if I had just done this 8 years ago, especially now with the way EXP is, the way that they have evolved, and all the things that they've put out just over like 3 to 6 months. Like they're constantly evolving and putting out new stuff and getting better. Is just don't wait, don't overcomplicate it.
Absolutely, man. That's some great advice. Ben, thanks so much for being here. Thank you for
Yeah,
tuning in. We'll
appreciate
take
it, man.
you in the next show.